Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Tuesday. It is the first day of April 2025. And as always, some important stories have come across the wire in the last few hours, so let's get right to them. Now, as we talked about earlier, there is a worry that worldwide Israelis will be attacked by terrorists. Well, this first headline certainly illustrates this. Beirut strike foiled joint Hezbollah-Hamas plot to kill hundreds of Israeli overseas, authorities say. So this is a huge score for Israel. Now, in a really interesting story, next one, Iran's nuclear catch-22, enrichment missiles of the concession game. Now, a catch-22, just if you're not really sure what it means, it refers to a paradoxical situation where an individual is trapped by contradictory rules or conditions. In other words, it's impossible for them to escape, and that's where Iran finds itself right now. The term originated from Joseph Heller's 1961 novel called Catch-22. It's now used to describe any similar impossible situation. This is what Iran finds itself in, as the headline says, a Catch-22. Now, this next story is fascinating. The Comptroller of Israel warned Netanyahu and Gallant of border security negligence ahead of the October 7th attack from Hamas. Now, what's interesting, this Comptroller is actually a fan of Netanyahu. He's a partisan on the side of Netanyahu, but in this case, he said he warned them, both he and Gallant, who was the defense minister at the time, of security problems in both the north and the south. Now, this could have something to do with the future of Israel and its leadership, because our next headline is Bennett 2026. Former PM Naftali Bennett registers a new political party. Bennett has been the PM before. He could give Netanyahu a run for his money, and that's what we're going to indicate. It's going to all depend on what happens with Gaza and with Iran. If Israel solidly defeats both these foes, all will be forgiven. They'll move forward. If there's a problem with what happens with Hamas and Iran at the end of the day, then look out. They'll be going for Netanyahu's scalp, probably. All right, U.S. now has said it has killed the top Houthi missile expert. So they continue to bombard the Houthis and continue to see them, actually, as one of the stories said, running out of missiles. The production is low. The ability to fire a huge missile is problematic for him because it lays himself open. In other words, it takes time to get it set, get it ready, and it becomes visible, and so it becomes possible to destroy it. So this is good news for the U.S. and Israel and the shipping for the world and that, because it's cost billions of dollars for shipping to be rerouted because the Houthis have been, the last year firing at ships in the Red Sea. And finally, a really important story. Voters head to the polls in three key elections today in Florida and Wisconsin. And this will largely determine where we're going with a country in the next couple of years, and with the elections coming up 2026. Every 2 years, there are the House of Representatives, 435 members in the House. Each 2 years, there's an election for every House seat. In the Senate, a senator is there for 6 years. So in every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for re-election, the way it's staggered there. So these are huge elections. What's going to happen? We'll talk about them and the repercussions tomorrow when we find out what occurred. And we'll see. It's going to be very dicey in a couple of these. Anyway, let's get to the headlines. Headline number one, Beirut strike foiled joint Hezbollah-Hamas plot to kill hundreds of Israeli overseas, authorities say. This is from Ynet News. Airstrike targeted top Hezbollah operative planning imminent overseas attack with Hamas that could have killed hundreds. Intel gathered by Shin Bet unit focus on dismantling overseas Hamas networks. Israeli authorities said Tuesday they thwarted a major terrorist attack being planned against Israeli targets abroad in what they described as one of the most serious plots in recent years. The IDF and Shin Bet security agency confirmed that the overnight strike in Beirut's Dahiya district, a Hezbollah stronghold, targeted and killed Hassan Ali Mahmoud Badir, a senior operative in Hezbollah's Unit 3900 and the Iranian Quds Force. Now, this guy was a big fish. He was one of the leaders in the terrorist movement. In fact, there's a picture of him with the late Soleimani. Remember him? Was killed in the year 2000. He was the genius that put together the whole system there of Iran with their spies and all of that. He's irreplaceable, but they show him on a plane next to Soleimani. So this person had some real clout and he has now been eliminated. Now, while this is a huge success for Israel, it illustrates what we referred to earlier today. There are groups worldwide, as well as here in the United States, who would like to do nothing else but massacre Jews. As we often stress, this sort of behavior illustrates one of the biblical signs of the end. In fact, sign 21 of our 25 signs were near the end, and the whole world will be against Israel. There'll be a increase of anti-Semitism at the time of the end. And in our book, 25 Signs Were Near the End, sign 21, we developed this. And as always, 25 Signs Were Near the End is one of our many books on our website, Educating Our World, which is, they're all free downloads as well as all our videos. So please take advantage of that. All right, headline number 2. This is Iran's nuclear catch-22, enrichment, missiles, and the concession game. This comes from the Jerusalem Post. Listen to this. Iran is saying it has the right to develop all the components to build a bomb, and if the U.S. tries to stop it, then Iran will build a bomb. All right. As the U.S. positions aircraft in the Indian Ocean that could strike Iran's nuclear program, Tehran is warning that if Washington acts, then Iran will develop a nuclear weapon. In essence, the Islamic Republic is saying that it has the right to develop all the components to build a bomb, and then if the U.S. tries to stop it through action, then it will build a bomb because America did something to stop it building a bomb. This kind of catch-22 is where Iran thrives in its use of nuclear threat to get concessions and create chaos. Well, the problem with Iran is they're going to lose either way. Ali Larijani, who serves as a key aide to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, made this catch-22 warning on Monday. In other words, here's your problem, U.S. Whatever you do, you can't win. If you don't attack, we're going to build the bomb. If you do attack, we're going to build the bomb. Under the pretext, if you do attack, that we have to now. So Israel be compelled to move forward producing an atomic bomb, he said. He claimed that Iran is carrying out its nuclear program under the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. He said the country is not moving toward developing nuclear weapons. That's just an outright lie. They've been doing this for 20 years. However, it's widely known that Iran has enriched uranium and stockpiled the enriched uranium, which is approaching the grade needed for nuclear weapons. Tehran has also increased the range and precision of its ballistic missiles. It might put a nuclear device on these missiles in the future. Well, let me put it this way. The second they have the missiles that'll be guided to those sites, perfected to that degree, and they have the weapon, they will use it. They haven't got there yet. But again, they have to develop two things, right? The payload, which is the nuclear weapon, that has to be there. And then number 2, you got to have the delivery system that gets it to the right place. And they have not perfected that yet, but they're working towards both of those. So anyway, this Larijani is messaging the Trump administration. Iran has said it's open to indirect talks with the U.S. On Saturday, Trump warned there will be bombing if Iran does not come to make a deal with America. If at any point you move toward bombing, whether by yourselves or by Israel, you will force Iran to make a different decision. This is what Larijani says. It's not in your interest either, so however you calculate it, there's no benefit for you. In other words, you're in the catch-22 here, U.S. No matter what you do, you're in bad shape. In other words, don't bomb us or we'll develop a nuclear bomb. They assume that nobody has noticed that for some 20 years, a nuclear weapon has been in the developmental plans of Iran. Indeed, like we said, as soon as they develop one, plus the delivery system, they will use it. U.S. and Israel, which monitor Iran closely, will not let that come to pass. All right, now we have 2 stories here that could have a real interesting effect on the future of the leadership of Israel. And again, we deal with Israel all the time here on Breaking News because Israel is, according to the Bible, is God's clock, his timepiece. The nation is the hour hand, the city of Jerusalem is the minute hand, and the Temple Mount is the second hand on God's clock for time and eternity. So we always keep an eye on that because as Israel goes, so will God's plan to set up his kingdom here on the planet Earth. Now, the Comptroller, according to this story, did warn Netanyahu and Gallant of border security negligence ahead of October 7th. This is from the Jerusalem Post. The report comes along with Engelman's new report on Tuesday, which slammed border security on the northern border during the mid-2023 period. State Comptroller Netanyahu Engelman warned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant and the defense establishment on August 14th. That's 2 months before October 7th in 2023. of severe border security negligence, and none of the involved parties took any action to fix the situation prior to the October 7th disaster. In other words, 2 months before the Hamas attack on October 7th, Engelman warned of severe security negligence to both Netanyahu and the border security people, the establishment. The disclosure was made alongside Engelman's issue of a new report on Tuesday, which slammed border security on the northern border during the mid-2023 period. Although the criticism themselves were made regarding the northern border, and the reality there has been radically changed post the 2023 conflict with Hezbollah, the fact is that if Netanyahu, the IDF, and then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant had taken the criticism seriously, then it's possible Hamas's October 7th invasion could have been prevented. Now, here's one of the reasons why. Remember, Hamas on October 7th invaded from the south, assuming Hezbollah would join invading from the north. Fortunately for Israel, they did not, because that would have overwhelmed the Israeli Defense Force. So the point that he's making, if they would have shored up the northern border, then Hamas wouldn't have attempted to attack from the south because they would not have had any help from the north. And so anyway, nearly all the problems Engelman found on the northern border existed also on the southern border, the article says, as well at the time, and in many ways, he says they're even worse on the southern border. Now, for Netanyahu, this latest allegation could be, and here's the operative word, could be, a lightning rod for at least two reasons. For one, it presents a scenario where he had warnings of severe border security problems from a serious authority, separate from the IDF and from Shin Bet, the service there, that the defense service that they're there, who has said misled him about the security situation. In other words, these are the people who are supposed to tell Netanyahu what the security service is. They're in charge of that security. Shin Bet, the country. And he said they misled him. They didn't tell him what was going on. Well, according to this fellow, Netanyahu was told too, as well as the defense, echelon. In other words, as the article said, it's going to be harder for him to claim there was no way for him to know how bad the border security situation was when he was informed 2 months ahead of time how bad it was. So it's not just the Shin Bet that didn't, and the IDF help him along with that. He was told by this comptroller. Second, Engelman has stuck his neck out to defend Netanyahu at a number of key points over the years, for which much of the center left has turned on him as a rogue, loyalist comptroller who ignores his duty to criticize the prime minister. The fact that he and you're not usual officials who regularly slam Netanyahu is attacking the prime minister for ignoring the border security warnings gives the issue a flavor of greater credibility and of being nonpartisan. So this is not one of the usual guys who goes after Netanyahu. In fact, as we said, he's defended Netanyahu in the past. That's why when he goes after him now, it seems all the more credible. Now, here's the bottom line. We'll see where this goes. Much depends on the outcome of the campaign in Gaza, as well as what eventually takes place with Iran. If the enemy is soundly defeated, and the public will likely overlook it, and we'll just move on, call it a day and move on. But if there's real problems at the end of the day with Gaza and or Iran, they'll probably be looking for his scalp. So let's just wait and see. Which brings us to headline number 4, Naftali Bennett. Bennett 2026, former PM Naftali Bennett registers new political party. From the Israel National News. He registered today on April Fool's. In fact, a lot of people thought it was an April Fool's joke, and it turned out not to be. Now, Bennett's representative stated if and when it is decided to actually run in the elections, an announcement will be made on the matter. All he did today was register a party under the temporary name of Bennett 26. He is aiming to run in the Knesset elections again, and he's already surrounded himself with a number of advisors to assist him doing so. Among other things, he is supported by favorable polls that predict his party under his leadership could win more than 20 seats in the Knesset, most of which would come from the center-left bloc. Now, he could prove to be a viable foe for Netanyahu. Like we said in the previous story, it's going to largely depend on the outcome with Hamas and Iran. Now, headline number 5, the U.S. said it killed the top Houthi missile expert. This comes from the Jerusalem Post. It said the U.S. strikes in Yemen earlier this month killed their top expert, but the U.S. military so far has declined to confirm the death. The White House has said that U.S. strikes in Yemen earlier this month killed this person. This is the one where, remember, it was overheard by this leftist uber leftist Jewish anti-Semitic Jew Jeffrey Goldberg, anti-Republican, anti-right. I think you get the point. Goldberg is about um, what's the word I want to use now? I better can't use that one. About as bad as it can get with a personage there, supposedly a journalist, which he was the one that got in on the signal conversation that supposedly was top secret and reported what was said there. And it was during that conversation, Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, said that after the March 15 strikes, the first wave, they killed their head missiler here. He touted the killing in the secret text chat, too, which was published by The Atlantic, saying the first target, their top missile guy, they have positive idea of him walking to his girlfriend's building, and now it's collapsed. So anyway, he's supposedly dead. Now, the way the U.S. keeps hitting, here's the bottom line. The way the U.S. keeps hitting the Houthis would seem to indicate that sooner rather than later, they won't be able to lift up much of a threat against world shipping, and time will tell because they have been a thorn for the last year plus, and it's costing literally billions of dollars because ships have to reroute their way a much longer way to get to their destination because of the Houthi attack on shipping, and not just Israeli shipping, but all shipping there in the Red Sea. So time will tell what's going to happen here. And finally, headline number 6, and this one's a really important one. Voters head to the polls in 3 key elections in Florida, and Wisconsin. This is from the Epoch Times. Now, here's the bottom line. The races could decide the composition of the House of Representatives and are being slated as a referendum on Trump's term so far. Today, voters head to the polls in 3 races, 2 in Florida, 1 in Wisconsin, which will have substantial implications for the makeup of the U.S. House of Representatives and the Trump agenda. In Florida, voters will cast ballots for members of the House in 2 deep red, that's deep Republican special elections, as the chamber remains narrowly Republican. Voters in Wisconsin, one of the most important swing states at the national level, are set to choose a new judge for the state's Supreme Court. A contest that has both sides believe could have national implications. Why? Because its impact on redistricting. Taken together, the analysts see the 2 contests, the first held since Trump's sweeping victory in November, will be key bellwethers on showing the sentiment on the new administration. Now, what could happen if the leftist wins? If she wins, they could basically redistrict the state of Wisconsin. And when they talk about redistricting, that means they will move the boundaries around of different districts. And in doing so, what they could do and what they would plan to do is there's 2 Republicans now that are in the House of Representatives there, and the redistricting could make it very difficult for them to win re-election there because they would change the demographic of where, their constituents come from. Right now, they're in pretty solid red, country there, red Republican country, but there is the claim by the left there. If they win, they will redistrict in such a way which each of these guys could lose in the next election. And it's only like just a few vote margin in the House where Republicans have the advantage. So theoretically, and this is not impossible, in 2 years, the end of 2026, as it were, when the midterm elections come up, if the Republicans lose the House of Representatives, that means all the committees will be chaired by Democrats. And so much for getting any work done. Everything that Trump has tried to do will be thwarted because the committees will just will sit on the legislation that Trump puts forward. So it's going to have a real huge impact one way or another, whatever happens here tonight. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right. Now, these 3 important elections, again, we need to keep our eyes on. As an aside, in France, Marine Le Pen, her popularity is skyrocketing. We mentioned the other day about her ridiculous arrest and verdict that she can't run in the 2027 until 2027. If she can have this overturned, there's a chance that she and her party could lead France. Election does have consequences. Like I said, with this terrible rule by the judge and the verdict there saying that, she's 4 years in prison, 2 years suspended. She can't run for office till 2027. This has outraged the people of France. And so her popularity is just skyrocketing. Now, she was ahead anyway in the polls. So this really could become a thing that changes drastically the leadership of France if she can get this overturned. That's the big if. Now, sadly, here's the key. Unelected leftist judges, both in the US and France, are trying their best to thwart the will of the people. All right. And we'll keep you posted on these stories. Okay, as always, these stories move us closer to the time of the end, the fulfillment of biblical predictions of the time of the end. So, from every angle, what do we see? Miraculous fulfillment of all these things. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of Breaking News. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.